Zhang Jingyun obtained the benchmark system, but there are rumors in Wanjie. Call him Master, Monk, Breeding Model, Grassland Hero, Undead Knight, Immortal Lord, Insect Sword. Immortal Zhang Jingyun has a black line on his face. How can he stain someone's innocence? Who doesn't know that he has the character of Wei Jin and the legacy of Wei Wu? Love in Antarctica, Master, Huiyuanjia, Jingzhou Ancient City, Embroidered Spring Knife, Spirit Cage, Mr. Zombie, Fairy Ghost, Legend of the White Snake, Baoyan Lamp. P.S. It's not easy to be cute and new, seek to collect, seek to follow up, and seek encouragement. Keywords of the novel. People in the Heavens, Breeding Model without pop-ups, People in the Heavens, Breeding Model TXT Complete Collection Download, People in the Heavens, Breeding Model Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Crossing, Model System, Seeking Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Crossing, Model System, Seeking Collection. Outside the window, there are towering mountains, snowflakes rustling and falling, cold winds howling, and sharp air currents like a snow dragon ravaging this land. This damn place is really not inhabited by people. It's been 2 whole days. No one knows how Zhang Jingyun came here. 2 days ago, Zhang Jingyun was still browsing through a small broken website, playing mobile games, watching beautiful girls dance with their youth, and then continuing to play mobile games, feeling uncomfortable. That night. Mobile game liver until 4 a.m. Zhang Jingyun is preparing to wash up and sleep. To be honest, although his schedule is not very regular, Zhang Jingyun firmly believes that staying up late is impossible. Suddenly, it turned black in front of me. Seems pulled into an unknown space. In an instant, Zhang Jingyun was extremely afraid. He never thought he would die suddenly, and his mind was filled with endless regrets. Mad, how could this be? Browsing history not deleted. Mobile phones and computers are not formatted. Zhang Jingyun has a bottom line. In extreme fear, he repeatedly mutters that he is not afraid to leave his innocence in the world. Sudden death is not scary, what's scary is social death. I don't know how long it has been. When Zhang Jingyun opened his eyes, he found that things didn't seem as he had imagined. He didn't die, but lived well, but the situation before him was not very real. Zhang Jingyun thought he was dreaming. Because when he opened his eyes, he saw a woman with a sweet appearance and outstanding temperament lying tightly in a blanket with him. Good guy, it's that kind of dream. Zhang Jingyun understands that in the midst of youthful passion, who hasn't indulged in it? Then came a natural and intense battle. However, dreams can wake up. When Zhang Jingyun found himself unable to wake up, he began to panic, followed by unfamiliar memories flooding his mind. 2 whole days. Until today, after accepting all his memories, he finally had to accept the fact that it was not a dream. I've traveled by myself. In this icy and snowy world. No internet, no ice, no toilet paper because this is Antarctica. A place where no one pays attention even if it breaks their throat. The most crucial thing is that he initially thought it was a dream, but ended up toppling a beautiful woman. She didn't even think of resisting. As Zhang Jingyun sorted out his thoughts, many doubts in my heart were subsequently resolved. Zhang Jingyun traveled into a world of movies, where the original story was about 2 men and women who had no common language surviving in the Antarctic and developing mutual feelings. With the arrival of Zhang Jingyun, everything has changed. The male lead in the story quietly changes. The plot of the movie has also undergone subtle changes. The original male protagonist was the owner of a wedding company, and in order to carry out wedding business in Antarctica, he took a high-priced charter flight to adventure in snowy weather. As a result, the plane crashed into the depths of Antarctica. Fortunately, the predecessor did not perish in the deep sea of Antarctica with the plane, but survived. There are also 3 people accompanying. The captain and Russian girl Mao died on the spot, while another female doctor named Jing Rui was quite lucky, but was injured and unconscious. Antarctica, plane crash. Jing Rui. The memories of his predecessor overlap with those of Zhang Jingyun. Zhang Jingyun knows that this is the plot of a movie, but isn't the male lead named Wu Fuchen. The only memory of his predecessor is the name Zhang Jingyun. Apart from his identity, everything else is himself, his appearance, and his body. Zhang Jingyun is not indecisive either. Speaking of Jing Rui, it is very different from the original plot. She did not suffer a bone fracture due to a plane crash, as in the original plot. Jing Rui only suffered a head injury and fell into a coma, which should have been caused by a slight concussion. She woke up after arriving at the abandoned station. My predecessor flipped over 6 hills and carried her to a small station. Feeling emotional, this sister didn't suffer any punishment, and when she woke up, she was safer. Equally lucky is Zhang Jingyun. The predecessor worked hard to drag Jing Rui to a small station, but was replaced by Zhang Jingyun. If he had traveled through a plane crash, he could not guarantee that he would have taken Jing Rui to an abandoned small station. How lucky would it be to find an abandoned scientific research station outside the 6 mountains and carry a living person over to the vast South Pole? Absolutely the protagonist's halo. Zhang Jingyun thought of the 2 actors played by Zhang Wuji and finally understood that all the hardships were for Shi Xiaolong to eat, and all the girls felt like Su Yuping was soaking up. How similar is Zhang Jingyun to the latter? He traveled through time and saw Jing Rui, who was fair-skinned and beautiful, and innocent and moving countless times more than the teacher in the study materials. How could he not remain restless in his heart? Zhang Jingyun is still unsatisfied to this day. The 2 of them snuggled tightly on a small bed, sensing something unusual. Jing Rui also opened her eyes, and the atmosphere became charming. Zhang Jingyun is breathing rapidly. Sitting still. Go to his mother Luxiaoyi. At that time, Zhang Jingyun had not yet realized about time travel and thought it was just a special dream, so his courage gradually increased as before. Jing Rui couldn't conceal the panic on her face, feeling a strange movement. She instinctively wanted to push away Zhang Jingyun who was causing trouble. Unfortunately, Jing Rui hesitated. Allow Zhang Jingyun to embrace. Although she was unconscious, when she was half unconscious and half awake, she vaguely heard a man yelling crude and bold. I must have carried you over these 6 mountains. In Jing Rui's heart. Zhang Jingyun brought her hope. Zhang Jingyun didn't know what Jing Rui was thinking in his heart. It was just a dream, and he was as passionate as fire, ignoring the howling cold wind outside the window. Zhang Jingyun realized what he had done. But Jing Rui remained silent about what happened that day, as if nothing had happened, and Zhang Jingyun naturally felt embarrassed to mention it. The man who carried her over 6 mountains has been completely replaced by himself. To put it more seriously, he has stolen the achievements of others. Zhang Jingyun couldn't help it either. He could only sigh and say to his predecessor in his heart, rest assured, let's go. I will definitely take care of Jing Rui and take her out of Antarctica. Jing Rui has rich geographical knowledge and is also a top student. She judged that China's Aurora station is only 20 kilometers away from here through the cans and rice in the small station. But Jing Rui doesn't know the direction. Zhang Jingyun has been receiving his predecessor's memories these past 2 days, and coupled with his lack of geographical knowledge, he may not even be able to distinguish between east, west, north, and south in Antarctica. Jing Rui thought twice. So I decided to go out alone and seek help from the Aurora station. Academic elites can indeed distinguish between east, west, north, and south. But the top student ignored the need to combine theory with practice. On the 2nd day of searching for the Aurora station, Jing Rui slipped and broke her leg. Left leg tibia fracture. It was picked up by Zhang Jingyun from a few kilometers away. Now Jing Rui is lying pitifully on the bed, and Zhang Jingyun is worried about how to fix his bones. Although he has traveled through time, he seems to have nothing to worry about. Suddenly, Zhang Jingyun froze. A message flashed before my eyes. Practice with your partner once, attribute points +1, Zhang Jingyun. Is it? Zhang Jingyun's eyes suddenly lit up, and his mind moved. In an instant, a data panel appeared out of thin air. Model system, host. Zhang Jingyun, realm. None, life. 25/89, practice. None, skill. Bone joining. Not beginner, attribute point. 1, companion, cultivation, and model system. TSK, this system actually applies to me. Do you really think I'm that kind of person? Zhang Jingyun sneered. Mad, you're so accurate at judging people. P.S. New book for newcomers, please provide more guidance. Cute and new is not easy, seeking collection recommendation, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Black silk is really deadly, seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Black silk is really deadly, seeking collection, in November, on the Antarctic continent. Near the Drake Strait, it is extremely dark. This continent covered in ice and snow is rarely visited by humans, with an average temperature 20 degrees lower than the Arctic, earning it the nickname of a white desert. In the howling cold wind, a wooden cabin stands out of place. There is talk coming from the room. Spread your legs apart. Are we going to start now? We need to stop waiting, I'm not ready yet. The woman was unsure whether she was nervous or afraid, with a trembling voice. No way. The man's voice was unquestionable. This kind of thing has not been discussed, and we absolutely cannot drag it on any longer. If you're too nervous, you can close your eyes and let me do the rest. The man's voice suddenly softened. No. No need. But please be gentle, I'm afraid of pain. And try to do it as soon as possible, excessive pain may shock me. Don't worry, Zhang Jingyun replied. In front of me is a double bunk bed with upper and lower floors. Jing Rui sat on the lower bunk bed with a pale face. Her left shin bone was broken, and she was constantly enduring intense pain. If timely bone grafting is not possible, her muscles will undergo extensive necrosis, followed by visceral dysfunction, until she dies in pain. Zhang Jingyun doesn't know how to fix bones, but he doesn't panic. He thought to himself, system, add some points. The only attribute point was added to the bone joining skill, and the next second, Zhang Jingyun saw in the skill bar that bone joining instantly changed from not beginner to beginner. Model system, name. Zhang Jingyun, realm. None, life. 25/89, practice. None, skill. Introduction to bone joining, attribute point. 0, in an instant, Zhang Jingyun's mind shook. A flood of memories surged in like a torrent. In a moment, Zhang Jingyun felt like he was enlightened, as if he had studied hard for a long time and had gained such rich experience through his own efforts. Wow, cow. Zhang Jingyun was pleasantly satisfied. The magic of the system is beyond imagination. We're about to start. Zhang Jingyun gently rolled up Jing Rui's pants and then reached out to touch the location of the fracture. Jing Rui endured the pain. It's just a simple fracture with displacement, but even if I fix it for you now, I can't guarantee there will be no sequelae in the future. Zhang Jingyun said while looking. Introduction to bone joining did not turn him into a holy hand, and it cannot be guaranteed that there will be no sequelae. After all, the conditions here are too basic. Jing Rui no longer cares about whether there are any sequelae. It's a matter of two different opinions whether the two of them can leave Antarctica alive. Rui, you may have to lie in bed for a long time. If you continue like this, you will get pressure sores. You need to take off your pants first and do it yourself. Zhang Jingyun turned around consciously after finishing speaking. Behind him, a groping sound came, but Zhang Jingyun waited for a while, but didn't hear Jing Rui shout, "Okay." Finally, Jing Rui's faint voice came, "No, I can't take it off myself. I need your help." At the end, the sound was barely audible. With his head down, his face turned red. "Okay." Zhang Jingyun turned around in response, reached his hand in, and precisely opened the zipper of Jing Rui's sprint pants, then grabbed the waist of the pants and took them off. Jing unintentionally trembled in an instant. She wore a thermal insulation inner lining in her assault pants, followed by a pink-fitted cotton pants. Zhang Jingyun gently pulled down the legs of the pants, but accidentally pulled the underwear. Jing Rui's eyes were sharp and her hands were quick, so she grabbed it directly. The sudden sound made Zhang Jingyun instinctively look up and look over from his perspective. Black lace with patterns. You can see everything at a glance. Black silk is really deadly. Zhang Jingyun's heart accelerated uncontrollably, and after admiring for 2 seconds, he quickly pulled up the blanket to cover up this beautiful scenery. "Why didn't you pay attention before?" Zhang Jingyun muttered to himself. He had already had in-depth communication with Jing Rui, but at that time he was not completely clear-headed, and many noteworthy things were all ignored. Jing Rui's face was shy. She regretted asking Zhang Jingyun for help after she finished speaking. She was wearing semi-transparent lace underwear, not any boxers. But Zhang Jingyun's work is too agile. Take off Jing Rui's pants 3 times, 5 times, and 2 times, deep enough to quickly and ruthlessly grasp the essence of the 3 characters, without giving her any time to repent. So much so that Jing Rui felt Zhang Jingyun seemed to be waiting for her to offer help. On this side, Zhang Jingyun suddenly lifted his head and looked straight at Jing Rui after confirming his calf injury, his gaze clear and sincere. "Our current situation, as long as we can live, we don't have to worry about anything else." Zhang Jingyun said suddenly, the topic changed. "Besides, you have good taste. You're still talking." Jing Rui viciously reached out to pat Zhang Jingyun. The next second, a piercing pain came, and Zhang Jingyun broke her leg straight. "Ah!" Jing Rui couldn't help but shed tears. Zhang Jingyun fixed his legs with a wooden board and said, "This way of joining may result in one leg being long and one leg being short, a bit lame. As long as we can survive." Jing Rui wiped away 2 lines of clear tears from the corners of her eyes. Under Zhang Jingyun's gaze, Jing Rui continued, "I'll break my right leg and connect it again. Not only will I not limp, but I can also grow a few centimeters taller." Zhang Jingyun. "You don't seem to have depression." Jing Rui was surprised and said, "How do you know?" Zhang Jingyun said, "Before the plane fell into the sea, I saw you carrying fluoxetine and paroxetine while picking out something useful to rescue it. I thought you would easily take the medicine, but when I dragged you out, you were holding a collection of Tagore's poems. You haven't been depressed these past 2 days, and Tagore's poems are really extraordinary." Jing Rui was taken aback for a moment, then shook her head and said, "I've been starving and in excruciating pain these past few days. I can't even care about depression." Zhang Jingyun smiled. Jing Rui experienced a hellish torment and quickly fell asleep. Zhang Jingyun couldn't wait to study the system panel. A lifespan of only 89 is considered longevity. The realm and cultivation methods have not yet been established. Only skills can appear at the right time. Zhang Jingyun seemed lost in thought. Another thing is attribute points. Without attribute points, the bone grafting for Jing Rui would not be so smooth, and it is likely to leave serious sequelae. Then is the way to obtain attribute points. Zhang Jingyun's gaze drifted towards Jing Rui, who was sleeping soundly. "Companion, practice. Jing Rui, if you hadn't broken your leg, it would be great. You could try again." Unable to verify what was thought, Zhang Jingyun felt uncomfortable as if scratching his heart and liver. Looking down, Zhang Jingyun saw the hidden interface. Progress. Love in Antarctica, taskbar. Live 3/75, Zhang Jingyun's eyes lit up. This is the third day of the journey. Jing Rui once said that if the Aurora station cannot be found within 75 days, the polar day will turn into polar night, and one can only wait until death. So, do I still have a chance to go back? P.S. Seeking recommended tickets and collecting them, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Goddesses also want to defecate, seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Goddesses also want to defecate, seeking collection. When Jing Rui woke up, Zhang Jingyun sat by the window. She carefully felt it and found that her calves were not as painful as before. A hint of surprise flashed on Jing Rui's face. Immediately, she sat up with her hands supporting her body. The sunlight in the Antarctic polar day was very bright, shining through the window on the blanket. She slept very comfortably. Wake up. Zhang Jingyun heard the sound coming. I just checked your injury again, and to my surprise, after sleeping for 9 hours, the area where you were injured has all subsided. Other people have broken bones, and even if they recover for 10 or 8 days, it's difficult to recover to the current level. Do you usually recover so quickly from injuries? No. Jing Rui was puzzled and lifted the blanket to take a look. The previously swollen area had indeed subsided, and the recovery speed was astonishing. Zhang Jingyun opened his mouth. Please remind Jing Rui that there is still someone here. Zhang Jingyun personally took off her assault pants and close-fitting sweaters, leaving only black lace underwear. But I looked at it. Zhang Jingyun didn't mind his own business. Jing Rui's words indeed confirmed his speculation that this recovery speed was abnormal. You haven't seen anything strange, have you? Zhang Jingyun casually asked. No, there isn't. Zhang Jingyun is even more certain. I had a deep conversation with Jing Rui before, and through their cultivation, he gained attribute points. Jing Rui never lost anything. Now it seems that Jing Rui may not have a panel, but that kind of cultivation is also beneficial to her, but Jing Rui herself was not aware of these. Zhang Jingyun didn't point it out either. Just know the secrets of the system yourself. Based on this recovery rate, in a few more days, I'm afraid it won't be enough. Zhang Jingyun suddenly had a bold idea. Shake your head and wake up a bit. Zhang Jingyun suddenly sighed and said, I've seen a ghost. I don't know who made this system, but it still has this function. What kind of practice? Isn't this what we call double cultivation? Although not very serious. But it has to be said that Zhang Jingyun really likes it. What job do you do? Zhang Jingyun walked around the house and casually asked, in this abandoned small station, besides a double wooden bed, there is also a dining table and kitchen counter. There is a pile of seasonings with different languages on the kitchen table, and there are many canned goods and even wuchang rice on the north shelf. Research high-altitude physics. Jing Rui said with a gloomy expression. This is already her second time revealing lace underwear, and she is still the same person. It seems like she has no secrets in the other person's eyes. Oh, high-altitude physics. Do you know? To be honest, it's my first time listening. Jing Rui was choked for a moment and asked Zhang Jingyun, what about you? What are you doing in Antarctica? A wealthy man wearing fur is even rarer than Aurora. What is Aurora? It's Aurora. Aurora is the goddess of dawn in Roman mythology. Zhang Jingyun was not very interested. I came to Antarctica mainly to cooperate with Tianjin Station. Have you heard of the Eternal Wedding Company? I've heard of it. Death is expensive. I am the boss who will last forever. Jing Rui widened her eyes and looked at Zhang Jingyun, considering that you came to Antarctica wearing fur and a gold watch, and heard that you are the eternal boss, I was not surprised. Zhang Jingyun felt like there was only one word between the lines, dirt. Although Jing Rui didn't say it once, Zhang Jingyun still felt it clearly. Speaking of which, you boss of a wedding company, what kind of cooperation are you talking about in Antarctica? Jing Rui suddenly asked. Zhang Jingyun emphasized, international cooperation. The company went public, so in order to have a theme for the roadshow, I came to Antarctica to explore the way and talk to Lao Maozi about the Antarctic wedding business. Someone came to Antarctica to get married. Jing Rui was greatly surprised. No one knows Antarctica better than her. The weather is cold and the earth is frozen, and the wind and snow are like knives. Who can be so restless? Don't you spend money to suffer? Zhang Jingyun said, there's so much more. Just think about it, taking an oath on an iceberg, having 2 penguins as bridesmaids, sending helicopters, chiseling a piece of ice from an ancient iceberg and putting it in champagne. This is what we call the wine of heaven and earth. How much is it? A person costs 1 million. Where is the witness? The old Maozi stationmaster of Tianjin Station. Jing Rui said, Zhang Jingyun's words made her understand a truth, that is, money can really do whatever it takes to make a wedding a success. The temperature in the room was not low, it could be over 10 degrees. Jing Rui was wearing a sweater and sleeping under a blanket, sweating profusely and her body was sticky. Thinking of not being able to take a shower. Jing Rui felt a wave of despair. Her mind was filled with Aurora, the goddess of dawn. Apart from moderate depression, she also had a cleanliness obsession. She instinctively looked at Zhang Jingyun, who was cooking. I can only rely on the man in front of me to take a shower. Suddenly, a hint of shyness flashed on Jing Rui's face. Jing Rui. You are really a talented person. How did you think of having a man who has only known you for 3 days help you take a shower? What's taking a shower? I've done even more outrageous things. A voice suddenly sounded, and Jing Rui's inner struggle grew stronger. Pop. Until a bowl was placed in front of her. What do you think? The natural gas stove can still be used. I cooked congee and opened a pot of lunch meat. We only have breakfast and dinner. Try to eat less for dinner. Jing Rui nodded and said, the heating doesn't turn on during the day. We only have 600 liters of diesel and a 2 kilowatt generator. Even if we run it for 8 hours every night, it will only last for 75 days. When the time comes. Zhang Jingyun interrupted Jing Rui and said, I know that we can only live if we find the Aurora station within 75 days. Let's eat. Jing Rui took up the bowl, hesitated for a moment, then sipped congee and ate some pieces of lunch meat. It seemed that she had no appetite. At first, Zhang Jingyun didn't pay much attention. He thought that Jing Rui had a small appetite, but it wasn't until late at night that he understood everything. Dong dong. Dong dong. The sound of knocking on the bedboard was heard several times. Zhang Jingyun, who was sleeping on the upper bunk, was finally awakened. He leaned his head and looked drowsily at Jing Rui under the bed, asking, what's wrong? That. Jing Rui's face turned red. Zhang Jingyun didn't hear anything, moved his pillow, and was about to go back to sleep, but the sound of knocking on the bedboard quickly rang again. Zhang Jingyun let out a sigh. Rui, what's going on? Jing Rui grabbed the edge of the blanket, enduring something. Finally, she took out the greatest courage in her life and muttered, I want to go to the bathroom. Zhang Jingyun still couldn't hear clearly. He was afraid of something wrong, so he climbed off the wooden bed and leaned in front of Jing Rui, asking with concern, what are you saying? Jing Rui actually cried. She cried and said, I want to go to the bathroom. Zhang Jingyun was foolish, and at the same time, he understood why Jing Rui hesitated even to eat. It turned out that it was not because of a bad appetite, but because she had a good digestion. Why are you crying? I thought Aurora, the goddess of dawn, didn't even defecate. Zhang Jingyun comforted Jing Rui when she saw that Jing Rui was crying a few minutes later. Jing is like pasta, like dead ashes. Her purity is pure, and her lack of appetite for food and drink all perished with the return of Zhang Jingyun. P.S. Seeking recommendations and collections, end of this chapter. Chapter 4 begins with non-stop drawing of, seeking collection. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 4 begins with non-stop drawing of, seeking collection. This is the fourth day of being trapped in the South Pole. Zhang Jingyun used a multifunctional Swiss military knife hacksaw to cut a hole in the bedboard, and then placed a basin under the bedboard. Jing Rui feels like a new life. It's just that there's no need for Zhang Jingyun to defecate, it's like getting rid of some big demon king's control. However, in this way, Jing Rui can basically take care of herself now, and Zhang Jingyun can follow the plan to go out and seek help from the Aurora Station. Tomorrow, I will go out to find the Aurora Station. It's noon now, and there are fishing gear in this small station. I want to try my luck. Zhang Jingyun looked at the time and said. Jing Rui agreed. 75 days is not long, but it is also not short. If the food problem can be solved, the future will be better. The ice layer in Antarctica is very thick. It is impossible to drill a hole. Zhang Jingyun is going to the north, while Jing Rui is going to explore the way. Although she broke her leg, she has gained a lot. At least she knows that the north is the sea and she can fish. When the plane crashed, it crashed on the west side of the small station, which was a sea with thick ice, so both the west and north sides were the sea. Zhang Jingyun remembers that this small station is surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, so there are also sides to the east and south that are surrounded by the sea. The specific details will only be known through personal observation. Surrounded by the sea on 3 sides and a 20-kilometer Aurora Station, I don't believe I can't find it. Zhang Jingyun has more confidence in survival than Jing Rui. Walk for about 2 hours. Arrived at the position mentioned by Jing Rui. This is the sea surface washed away by the collapse of an iceberg. Zhang Jingyun came to the edge of the iceberg and shuddered as he looked at the bottomless sea. Open the fishing gear and pick up a can of sardine. Zhang Jingyun hangs a piece of sardine's meat on the hook and throws it into the sea. Fishing, Zhang Jingyun has experience. At the beginning, I kept smoking. Zhang Jingyun himself is not very good at fishing, but his predecessor had rich experience. In his memory, his predecessor was a fanatic fan of a fishing tycoon. That fishing expert often posts fishing videos with delicate explanations and superb skills, earning him the title of 800,000 Air Force instructor across the internet. Zhang Jingyun gave it a hard pull. Shoo! The sound of fishing line drawing is extremely pleasant to the ear. No hit. It's okay, keep pulling, start in half an hour. Zhang Jingyun pulled again and again until his eyes were dry before tightening the zipper, curling up and waiting for the fish to catch the hook. Suddenly, Zhang Jingyun's eyes lit up. It's not a buoy moving, it's a change in the system panel and a sudden addition to the skill bar. Name. Zhang Jingyun, Realm. None, Life. 25 for 89, Practice. None, Skills. Beginner level bone joining, beginner level fishing, attribute point. 0, I see, skills are not automatically generated, but appear according to my needs. When I want to fish, skills are generated. Zhang Jingyun suddenly realized. Although there hasn't been much change in generating skills, it's equivalent to not knowing how to level them up before I get started, but I can still use attribute points to upgrade. If there is no skill, having attribute points is of no use. The skill is equivalent to 1, and the attribute point is equivalent to 0. Only by generating skill 1 can the attribute point 0 be valuable, that's all. Zhang Jingyun suddenly thought to himself, is it true that the system panel can generate any skill I want? Zhang Jingyun gave it a try. After a moment, he basically mastered it. The generated skills can be successful as long as they are within a reasonable range, such as swimming, singing, and even Sanda Taekwondo. But some are illusory. For example, flying is completely hypothetical and will not generate skills unless someone can prove that humans can theoretically fly. I tried for half a day. Make the skill bar messy. Except for bone joining, which is an entry-level skill, all the remaining skills are beginners. Looking at his head, Zhang Jingyun directly deleted all the beginner skills except fishing. At this very moment, Zhang Jingyun suddenly caught a glimpse of the buoy moving. Unexpectedly, Zhang Jingyun forcefully lifted it and pulled out a black Antarctic fish, bouncing and jumping. However, 3 to 5 seconds later, the fish had no movement, and Zhang Jingyun reached out. The fish weighing over a pound had already passed out of breath and was peacefully sleeping in a natural refrigerator. Zhang Jingyun did not finish. Maybe there are dens down there. Zhang Jingyun hurriedly hung another piece of sardines, threw it into the water, and then looked forward to the motionless buoy. 1 hour later, Zhang Jingyun has already caught 5 fish. Antarctic fish have a particularly large head and big eyes, so let's call them big-headed fish. If conditions permit, they can be used to make minced pepper fish heads. Zhang Jingyun has decided to put an end to it. Teacher Deng Gang is truly an Air Force instructor worth 800,000 yuan. Learning from him can really catch fish, but unfortunately, when the wind rises, the Antarctic wind cuts his face like a knife. Abandoned small station. Zhang Jingyun returned carrying 5 big-headed fish. Do you know that with the temperature of the Antarctic seawater, the growth rate of fish here is very slow, and most of them grow at an age? Jing Rui's face was full of surprises. That's a coincidence. It's not in vain for me to call it Mr. Sound Fish. Starting from tomorrow, I will go to the Aurora station every day and fish for another hour. Agreed. Dinner was extravagant. Stewed 3 whole fish. Zhang Jingyun didn't eat the minced pepper fish head that he had been longing for, but braised big head fish was also good. After dinner, it was already 8 o'clock. The sun is still clear outside the window. There was not much entertainment suitable for 2 people in the small station, and Zhang Jingyun climbed onto the bed early, like a brother sleeping on the upper bunk. Tell me about your research. Zhang Jingyun suddenly said. Jing Rui said, my main research focuses on things that are 80 to 300 kilometers above the ground, such as aurora, noctilucent clouds, and airglow. Zhang Jingyun. Is that all? Jing Rui said, sometimes we also study the magnetosphere over 500 kilometers. Oxygen molecules are broken down into 2 oxygen atoms by cosmic rays, and the electrons of nitrogen molecules may also be knocked out to become nitrogen ions. You keep talking. The high-energy electrons of the solar wind collide with atoms or molecules in the atmosphere, and the excited atoms and molecules will return to their ground state and emit unique light. Aurora. That's right, red, green, purple, and auroras are usually these 3 colors. Is it profitable to study this? Polar high-altitude atmospheric physics is a niche research field with limited research funding. It offers 3 years of graduate studies and 4 years of doctoral studies, with a monthly allowance of 1,500 yuan. After graduation, I work as an assistant researcher for 3 years, earning a monthly salary of 6,000 yuan. It seems that you love your job very much. Zhang Jingyun couldn't help but say. A doctoral degree earns a salary of 6,000 yuan, what else can be said besides passion? So I'm depressed. Jing Rui said calmly. Zhang Jingyun. Morning, 6 o'clock. Zhang Jingyun climbed up in pain. Jingrui also woke up when she cooked congee with rice, fried 2 fish and opened a can. She looked at Zhang Jingyun's busy back. Throughout the year, she worked in the polar regions several times longer than at home, and the scene before her seemed to only appear in her dreams. P.S. Seeking recommendations and collections, end of this chapter. Chapter 5 is mostly about imagination, seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 is mostly about imagination, seeking collection, Antarctica, 6:30 a.m. Zhang Jingyun fills the newly cooked congee with a thermos cup. Congee is mixed with canned lunch meat, which is enough for Zhang Jingyun to consume energy for a day. Now that we know the west and north sides of the small station are the sea, and there are still the east and south sides left, which direction are you planning to start looking from? Jing Rui asked. To the east. Zhang Jingyun spoke firmly, it's morning now, and the sun is rising from the east. As long as you're not blind, you shouldn't get lost. Jing Rui let out a sigh. I knew you knew too little about Antarctica, and you didn't even have basic knowledge, such as when the sun rises from the south during polar days in Antarctica. The sun rises from the south. Zhang Jingyun couldn't believe it. Since deciding to go out for help yesterday until this morning, Jing Rui has not provided any suggestions. Now it seems that she is holding back her big move. Zhang Jingyun didn't rush to leave either. He sat down and said, Comrade Jing Rui, could you please tell me anything else to pay attention to? Jing Rui smiled and said, you can be taught. In Antarctica, you need to learn to look at the sun. The sun does not set in the polar day of Antarctica, but rotates in circles in the sky. At noon, the sun is due north with the highest altitude angle, then deviates towards the northwest direction and moves towards the southeast direction, resulting in a smaller altitude angle. At midnight, the sun has the smallest altitude angle and is due south. Zhang Jingyun listened with a big head. His knowledge of geography is very poor. When it comes to professional knowledge, Jing Rui is in high spirits. Considering that Zhang Jingyun is an outsider, she can only draw the trajectory of the sun's movement. Zhang Jingyun had to admit it. A family with academic elites is like a treasure. Also, it should be noted that you usually use your right hand, so your right leg is stronger than your left leg. If you think you are walking straight, you will actually lean to the left. Under the influence of the Earth's rotational force, your direction will deviate, with the northern hemisphere deviating to the right and the southern hemisphere deviating to the left, so you will deviate further to the left. Remember, you can't just believe in your own feelings. Look for more reference points, such as a mountain, a stone, a glacier, etc. Try to make marks, and firmly remember certain landmarks so that you can come back. I remember, wait for me to go home. Zhang Jingyun knew that he might not be able to come back after this trip, but he still tried his best to be relaxed, even if it was to give Jing Rui a reassuring pill. Jing Rui is a foolish woman. I suddenly said something foolish last night. If Zhang Jingyun hasn't returned within 2 days, she definitely won't be able to survive either. She will take action on her own when the time comes. It was said so tragically. It seems like I'm going to die for love. Pulling up the zipper of the assault suit and tightening the shoelace, under Jing Rui's gaze, Zhang Jingyun waved his hand and stepped out of the cabin, heading east without looking back. Every step taken. Zhang Jingyun would always remember Rui's advice. The walking speed of a person is about 1 hour and 5 kilometers, and it takes about 4 hours to walk 20 kilometers, but the complex terrain of Antarctica requires an additional hour. In pure air, an ordinary person's line of sight can exceed 10 kilometers. When searching with their eyes, it is important to save energy and not wander aimlessly. Zhang Jingyun's feet creaked on the snow, and although Jing Rui had done his best to supplement his knowledge of Antarctic geography, if he really went out, he would only find that the reality was even more difficult. It takes almost 10 hours to go back and forth. We also need to deal with various unexpected situations. Zhang Jingyun's mental state is highly tense. Along the way, he marks distinctive scenery in his mind. As long as he remembers these, he is not afraid of not being able to go back. However, it took less than 2 hours to walk. Zhang Jingyun suddenly stopped in his tracks. At the foot of the front is a gentle slope, and below the slope, a vast expanse of white appears to be an ice field. On the ice sheet stands an iceberg. A few seals lazily lay at the tip of the iceberg, leisurely basking in the sun. This is the Weddell seal, which is about 3 meters long and weighs about 300 kilograms. Zhang Jingyun walked slowly closer. A Weddell seal lazily lifted its head, yawned and glanced at Zhang Jingyun, then continued to bask in the sun. After seeing such a large sea seal, Zhang Jingyun's saliva was almost flowing out, and his eyes were filled with high-quality protein and fat. If we could capture a Weddell seal, for the next 70 days, Rui and I would no longer have to worry about food. Zhang Jingyun thought to himself. However, after seeing the sharp teeth of the seal, he had to dispel the idea that although the seal's meat was appetizing, it still had to be eaten. To the east is the sea, so the next step is easy. The abandoned small station is surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. East, west, and north, and the road to survival is in the south. Zhang Jingyun is much more relaxed. He has 70 days to search south for rescue. Zhang Jingyun was in a good mood after his graduation victory. He drank the congee in the thermos cup at one go, and then lay on the snow slope with his backpack on his back, looking into the distance. The wind and snow have temporarily rested, and the world is rarely quiet. Zhang Jingyun, wearing sunglasses and basking in the sunlight, felt a hint of warmth on this icy and snowy Antarctic ice sheet. Perhaps he had been lying in the snow for a long time, when Zhang Jingyun's stomach suddenly turned upside down. He stood up and carried his backpack to the foot of the iceberg. Perhaps it's because Zhang Jingyun is too close. The seals that were sunbathing became very alert. They wriggled their fat bodies and moved to a snow pile, following the seal hole and diving into the sea. Zhang Jingyun put down his bag and untied his pants on his own. If it were Jing Rui and these people, they might have held back this mysterious power until the station was released. But Zhang Jingyun is casual and doesn't care much. If someone accuses him of urinating and defecating on this pure land in Antarctica, he will only smile calmly and say that what this mysterious power has left for me is the pride of Antarctica. An iceberg is as tall as a 10-story building. Zhang Jingyun crouched in front of the iceberg, appearing unusually small. The cold wind brushed against him, and looking at the iceberg in front of him, Zhang Jingyun always felt that this thing was not very sturdy. Suddenly, the wind began to roar. A loud roar from behind startled Zhang Jingyun, and he instinctively turned around to see a large block of ice collapse from the top with a thunderous force. Holy crap! Giant ice blocks smashed heavily against Zhang Jingyun's side, shattering the ancient ice sheet with a loud bang. Large waves mixed with ice debris and seawater rushed towards Zhang Jingyun. Zhang Jingyun didn't even lift his pants. I was directly shot out by this shockwave. The iceberg seems to be collapsing, like an artillery position, with tens of thousands of cannons firing together, and tens of thousands of cubic meters of ice falling one after another. Zhang Jingyun looked at both his head and buttocks. He grabbed the bag with one hand and ran wildly with the other, pulling his pants, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were howling behind him, and as if an unknown beast was opening its abyss mouth to devour him. Zhang Jingyun climbed continuously, but his speed was still too slow. When he saw a huge snowdrift, he made a strong effort to dodge behind it and curl up. The raging white mist, mixed with ice debris, roared past both sides of the snow pile and Zhang Jingyun's head, enduring for a long time. Zhang Jingyun's soul was still in shock. Click, click. Zhang Jingyun heard a cracking sound under his feet, and then suddenly fell down, hitting his body several times in the crack. Finally, he fell firmly onto an extended platform and passed out. Zhang Jingyun woke up and looked at his watch. He fainted for over 2 hours and fell from a crack in the ice sheet, which was unfathomable below and over 5 meters high above. Zhang Jingyun endured the sharp pain on his body and looked up and down, trying to climb out. However, he tried several times but was at a loss. Obviously, he was trapped. And this sleepiness lasted for 2 whole days. Within the small station, Jing Rui looked at the bed board on the upper bunk. When Zhang Jingyun left, she had already turned off the generator and the temperature inside was gradually decreasing. She lifted the blanket and looked at her calves. For injuries like this, it will take at least 2 weeks for bone scabs to form, and only then can they barely move, but Jing Rui moved slightly without any abnormalities. Is this guy some kind of expert? This kind of recovery speed even surprised herself, and Jing Rui felt unbelievable. Her overall mental state was particularly good. But with the passage of time, even the best mental state gradually turned into agony. It had been 2 days and Zhang Jingyun had not returned yet. Jing Rui looked at the calendar on the wall. This calendar must have been brought to the small station by Chinese people, because the cover is a special Guanyin Bodhisattva. It is estimated that the person who slept on this bed would first open their eyes and silently recite Amitabha Buddha every day. Jing Rui is an atheist. But she still worshipped Guanyin Bodhisattva devoutly and said, "Great and compassionate Guanyin Bodhisattva, please leave us a way out." After paying homage to Bodhisattva, the only thing Jing Rui can do is to look through Tagore's poems and turn to stray birds. Here is her favorite sentence. Life is like the splendor of summer flowers, death is like the serene beauty of autumn leaves. In the cold wind. A big hand thrust out from under the snow. Then an ice pick emerged with the force of wind and thunder, firmly piercing the ground. Zhang Jingyun leaned out and gasped for breath. Zhang Jingyun couldn't believe that he could climb out of the crack. He was trapped in the crack for 2 days. He kept using his ice pick to cushion his feet with shaved ice crystals. Keep raising it 2 meters high. Finally, I crawled out a little bit. Zhang Jingyun is tired and hungry, with stars shining in his eyes. If it weren't for the 5 fruit candies that Jing Rui left for him to save his life in critical moments, he would definitely not be able to hold on. That silly woman can't really take it hard, can she? Zhang Jingyun's heart was burning with anxiety. He didn't pay attention to rest and risked his life to walk back. Although he repeatedly warned Jing Rui not to seek shortcuts, he dared not gamble. Taking big strides forward, Zhang Jingyun also fought hard. Mad, do you want to die just because you contributed 1 attribute point to me? You think it's beautiful. The fortune teller said that my children will be in pairs this year, and I'm afraid it's not for you. As Zhang Jingyun rushed all the way to the abandoned small station, he saw a thin and weak figure lying in the snow under the window, his eyes turning red. Jing Rui's eyelids are heavy. Zhang Jingyun saw blood dripping from her wrist and his head buzzing. He grabbed her wrist and hugged her in his arms. Silly. Why can't you think about it? Zhang Jingyun roared at her. Jing Rui's faint but clear voice rang out, "Shake it gently. I'm not committing suicide, it's the window blown off by the wind, and the house is too cold." Zhang Jingyun was stunned and said, "So what are you doing?" "I was accidentally cut by broken glass." Jing Rui placed her hands around Zhang Jingyun's neck and said, "Take me in and say a few more words. The wound has healed." Zhang Jingyun. Do you actually think I would be so foolish as to cut my wrist and commit suicide? The success rate of cutting my wrist and committing suicide is less than 5%, and it's quite painful. I'm very afraid of the pain. You are more optimistic than I imagined. Zhang Jingyun breathed a sigh of relief, then forcefully lifted Jing Rui horizontally from his waist and walked quickly into the room. Jing Rui smiled and said, "I'm probably thinking about it. P.S. Seeking collections, recommended, end of this chapter." Chapter 6. Sleeping Too Cold Alone Seeking Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Sleeping Too Cold Alone Seeking Collection Lu Sun's Literature. Zhang Jingyun asked with a slanted eye. Jing Rui said, "Otherwise." Zhang Jingyun replied, "It could also be driving literature." "What is it related to driving?" Zhang Jingyun muttered, "Some people have thought it over, while others have figured it out. Hey, you don't understand driving, and at first glance, you don't have a driver's license. I really don't have a driver's license. Zhang Jingyun gently placed Jing Rui on the bed. Fortunately, Jing Rui's recovery was amazing. If it were someone else who had suffered a bone fracture, all previous efforts would have been wasted. I'll go fix the window first. The temperature inside the room was terrifyingly low. Zhang Jingyun finished speaking and picked up the bedpan from under the bed as if no one was around before leaving. Zhang Jingyun has already restored the truth. It is estimated that Jing Rui felt that the smell in the room was too strong and wanted to open the window for ventilation. However, she did not expect the windows of this small station to be too weak, and they were blown off by the wind in a few moments. Jing Rui clumsily climbed out to repair the window, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't fix it. She even cut her wrist until Zhang Jingyun rushed back. Zhang Jingyun quickly put the window back in place with a few clicks. The window hinges were no longer secure, so Zhang Jingyun decided to find a wooden board to nail the window in place. Now Jing Rui can't even dispel the odor. After finishing these tasks, Zhang Jingyun was already physically and mentally exhausted, and the temperature in the room had started to rise with the generator turned on. Zhang Jingyun took off his boots, then took off his clothes, until there was only one pair of underwear left on his body. Just as he was about to climb onto the bed, he was stopped by Jing Rui. Jing Rui's eyes were red. Looking at the scattered scars on Zhang Jingyun's body, she could imagine how dangerous it was to be alone outside these past 2 days. You sit over and I'll help you handle it. Zhang Jingyun obediently sat beside Jing Rui. You're seriously injured. Don't go out these days and rest well. If you die outside, I really can't survive, Jing Rui said calmly. Zhang Jingyun said, it's not a problem to rest for a few days. To the east is the sea, and the small station is surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. Our probability of finding the Aurora station is not small. This is good news, Jing Rui said happily. When you recover from your injury, you can slowly search in 3 directions. Southwest, south, and southeast. Simply put, I fell into a crack the day before yesterday, cold and hungry. If it weren't for my great fortune, you wouldn't have seen me. Zhang Jingyun lay beside Jing Rui and reached out his hand. That was it at that time. I saw a golden woman waving at me. I don't know if it was the Aurora Dawn goddess you mentioned. Jing Rui corrected, the wavelength of the red aurora is 630.0 nanometers, the green aurora is 557.7 nanometers, and the purple aurora is 427.8 nanometers. There is no gold color. What if? Science has no contingency. Zhang Jingyun exclaimed, maybe it's a hallucination, Rui. I'm too tired. Can you let me sleep for a while? Jing Rui's face turned red and she said, what nonsense. You should sleep on your own. Hey. Don't go too far, this is my bed. Sleeping alone is too cold. Zhang Jingyun finished speaking and started snoring. Hello. Jing Rui is in a hurry. Zhang Jingyun continued to snore. A golden sun shone on the head of the bed outside the window, covering Zhang Jingyun's cheeks. It was the first time Jing Rui had looked so seriously at Zhang Jingyun's face. Serious enough to count how many eyelashes. Jing Rui covered herself with a blanket and made a small bed, squeezing a pair of men and women together in the howling cold wind of Antarctica. Jing Rui couldn't sleep vertically and horizontally. Opening Tagore's poetry collection casually, it happened to be the 23rd poem in, On the Sick Bed. Jing Rui read, I saw in my dream that the shell of life had peeled off. Zhang Jingyun was trapped in a crack for nearly 40 hours, and in that environment, he dared not sleep at all. Who knew if he could still open his eyes? After finally coming back, Zhang Jingyun was really tired and had no strange thoughts. He snored for more than 10 hours. Amidst the sound of snoring, Jing Rui also fell asleep, her head buried in Zhang Jingyun's chest. She slept soundly and warmly. Zhang Jingyun woke up with a lot of energy. Unexpectedly, she fell asleep on Jing Rui's bed. Zhang Jingyun couldn't help but laugh. This girl is really kind, she should be a good match. Zhang Jingyun thought of several wise sayings that his deceased father had warned him and successfully implemented. Start a family first when you meet a good person. Start your career first when encountering influential people. Encounter a wealthy woman. Get married and start a business. Zhang Jingyun's father took the second path, but unfortunately, the middle path of the aristocracy collapsed and he did not achieve much in the end. Zhang Jingyun originally intended to take the third route. Now thinking about it, the first one is also good. Although he slept in Jing Rui's bed, he still needed some time to practice the cultivation method of the model soldier system. Sure enough, Zhang Jingyun hasn't waited to take action yet. Just welcomed Jing Rui's deadly gaze. Zhang Jingyun, this is not the first time we've met, Jing Rui said thoughtlessly, feeling quite puzzled. What? I said on the plane, it's not our first time meeting, Jing Rui said, have we met before? I have seen it. In Punta, all planes are grounded, and I am writing papers in my room. Every day, I hear the loud voice of the neighboring room. He kept making phone calls. Always greet the other person with your mouth. He said, after reading the roadshow script, it's not even possible. Don't tell me about the process. Grandpa, I want the result. Wait, I endured for 5 days before scolding him. Zhang Jingyun instantly flashed a memory and exclaimed in shock, that woman with disheveled hair who kicked the door is actually you. Zhang Jingyun couldn't imagine it. Jing Rui has such an irritable side. So, don't mess with the person writing the paper. Besides, the sound insulation in the room is really poor. Even if you lower your voice and make a phone call, I can hear you clearly. What did you hear? Jing Rui leaned on Zhang Jingyun's arm and learned, the girl next door is very irritable, She looks good, with long legs, Her butt is very perky, but her temper is too bad. Zhang Jingyun. Not only that, but Jing Rui became more and more addicted as she learned. Of course, she can't compare with the little AI from heaven and earth, it's too far away. Zhang Jingyun was instantly struck by lightning and said, I'm not. Don't talk nonsense, that's all me bragging to them. I know, because I've heard more than that. You grew up in an orphanage and wanted a home from the bottom of your heart. You got drunk and lamented that your house was too big, wandering like a lonely ghost. Zhang Jingyun tugged at the corner of his mouth, pretending to be fresh. He tried hard to recall that it was indeed what his predecessor had said. Unexpectedly, Jing Rui didn't hear a word of it. So, you are essentially a good person. Jing Rui's face was rosy and she turned her head, afraid to look at Zhang Jingyun. Seeing Jing Rui react like this. Zhang Jingyun doesn't understand anything yet. She really wants to open up. Tagore's other poem is very fitting at this moment. The traveler knocked on every stranger's door before arriving at his own doorstep. One must venture through the vast world outside, and only then reach the deepest hidden temple. Afterwards, Zhang Jingyun looked at the system panel. The golden small characters are clearly visible. Practice with partner once, attribute point plus 0.2, PS, seeking collections, seeking recommendations, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. On the importance of lace seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 on the importance of lace seeking collection. In the morning, the sun never sets. Zhang Jingyun's tearful eyes. After a few days, the attribute points finally made a comeback, and the system panel finally came into play. Unfortunately, there were too few attribute points. Last time it was still 1 o'clock, this time it was only 0.2. I'm afraid this system doesn't have a virgin complex, right? Zhang Jingyun tugged at the corner of his mouth. His expectations are still too high. Yes, just one attribute point can get you started with a skill, no less than a year of hard work, one skill point a day, so why not take off directly? According to this progress, as long as you accumulate 5 days, you can gather enough attribute points and elevate another skill to the entry-level level. So, in a blink of time, it was 5 days. At this point, Jing Rui had already subdued Zhang Jingyun, and her gaze at him was strange. It has been 5 days, do you know how she came here? I haven't let her settle down in these 5 days. After struggling for 5 days, Jing Rui felt even more that her legs had improved too much. Of course, she wasn't as exaggerated as walking down to the ground. But the recovery speed is clearly too fast. Even Jing Rui was skeptical. Do you have any special talents on yourself? Are there any mutated attributes that haven't been discovered? Will it be caught and sliced by relevant departments? Zhang Jingyun could see the changes in Jing Rui. The two of them achieved a win-win outcome through cultivation. Zhang Jingyun obtained attribute points, and Jing Rui accelerated her recovery speed. Thinking together, Zhang Jingyun opened the panel. Model System, Host. Zhang Jingyun, Realm. None, Life. 25 of 88, Practice. None, Skill. Beginner level bone joining, beginner level fishing, attribute point. 1.2, 5 days, attribute point 1.2. What does this mean? Once a day, put this for health preservation. Adding attribute points, Zhang Jingyun has already made arrangements to add them to fishing, and fishing beginner will instantly become fishing beginner. A plethora of fishing techniques flooded into my mind. In an instant, Zhang Jingyun felt as if he had been possessed by Deng Gang, and various fishing knowledge was directly engraved in his mind, unforgettable even if he wanted to forget it. Don't underestimate entry-level skills. For the panel, it is in beginner, but in reality, Zhang Jingyun can already be considered a skilled angler. Fishing is about talent, not everyone can practice it. That afternoon, Zhang Jingyun went to the old place to test drive. The conditions are a bit poor, but as long as the technology is good, the connecting rod is not a problem. Originally, Zhang Jingyun could only catch a maximum of 3 to 5 fish per day. Now, 10 pieces are effortless. His and Jing Rui's living standards improved instantly, and there was no need to strictly calculate their appetite. They could no longer hear each other's stomach growling in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, if it weren't for being in Antarctica, I would have caught so many fish. Hee, I passed through my house 3 times and didn't enter. Zhang Jingyun shook his head, brought a string of big-headed fish, and leisurely returned to the small station under the sun. Jing Rui's cheers gave him a sense of achievement. Trapped in Antarctica for 16 days. Zhang Jingyun has been searching south for a whole 10 days, and heaven and earth can tell. In these 10 days, Zhang Jingyun is not even lazy enough to steal. Walk more than 10 kilometers every day. Plus fishing for an hour every day. This is a significant challenge for Zhang Jingyun's physical strength. Every day when he returns to the small station, he becomes exhausted and unable to find the Aurora station. Grandpa, your luck is too bad. Zhang Jingyun returned to the small station and cursed, while Jing Rui knew that the same result had happened again, comforting Zhang Jingyun. There are still 2 months left, take it slow. Time waits for no one, I don't have much fear, but your weak body and long-term lack of vitamins may lead to sepsis. Jing Rui hesitated and said, why should I have it? If it were you, I always feel like my body is getting better and I don't know if it's an illusion. It's really hard to say who has sepsis. Zhang Jingyun realized that Jing Rui had also gained benefits in her practice, even more in terms of physical benefits than Zhang Jingyun. Zhang Jingyun didn't recover as quickly as she did when she was injured. Zhang Jingyun, as usual, hung up a string of Antarctic fish and fished for an hour every day. 10 days later, he had dozens of them in stock. Jing Rui doesn't even look at fish. After eating fish for 10 days, she has already lost her appetite. It's only been 10 days and it's been so difficult. What should it feel like to eat fish for 8 years? Antarctica, the 25th day. Zhang Jingyun has been walking for over 5 hours. He lay alone on the vast and boundless snowfield, feeling so suffocated that Zhang Jingyun even started talking to himself. Zhang Jingyun, what do you think of Rui? Doctoral-level academic achievers are very talented. Do you think she's pretty? Nonsense, that chest, that butt. Ask knowingly. Zhang Jingyun rested for a while, feeling his eyes a bit hot. He picked up 2 clumps of snow and placed them on his eyes, feeling a chill surge in his heart. My eyes are a bit more comfortable. A few days ago, Zhang Jingyun lost his only pair of sunglasses, and the white snowy plain constantly stimulated Zhang Jingyun's slightly red and swollen eyes. Zhang Jingyun walked back quickly. He can feel that his vision has decreased slightly, but he should still be able to bear it. He just needs to rest for 2 days when he goes back. However, the heavens did not fulfill people's wishes. Zhang Jingyun suddenly felt a tearing sensation in his eyeballs, followed by a strong beam of light piercing through his eyes, giving him an ominous feeling in his heart. He accelerated his pace and finally started running, but the scenery in front of him was blurring at a faster speed than he did. Suddenly, Zhang Jingyun stumbled and fell onto the snow, rolling along the slope 7 or 8 times before standing up dizzy and disoriented. Zhang Jingyun looked at him in confusion. He was like an ant that had fallen out of line, spinning around and trying to squint his swollen eyes, trying to discern the direction back. Jing Rui sat up. On the wall, she rubbed the 5th character. Now she can jump around with one leg, her left leg no longer feels any pain, and her recovery from the injury is astonishing. Jing Rui picked up the empty can box on the table next to her, took a sip of water, flipped through Tagore's poetry collection, and finally turned her head to look out the window. The wind is rising. She also has a bad premonition. Looking at Guanyin Bodhisattva's calendar, she prayed, "Great and compassionate Guanyin Bodhisattva, please bless Zhang Jingyun with a safe return." Rui. Zhang Jingyun roared on the boundless snowfield. He had repeatedly told himself not to panic, to remain calm and composed, until Zhang Jingyun lay on the ground and worked hard to watch the last trace of footprints being swallowed by the wind and snow. Zhang Jingyun can no longer calm down. He could feel that Jing Rui was not far away, but it was this last distance, like a heavenly moat, that mercilessly separated the two. Inside the small station, Jing Rui trembled for a moment. Zhang Jingyun. Zhang Jingyun. She truly heard the voice of Zhang Jingyun calling out, completely ignoring everything else. She jumped to the entrance of the small station with one leg, sinking her anger and accumulating strength. Jing Rui shouted loudly, "Zhang Jingyun." The strong wind howled between heaven and earth, and the small station was built on the mountain. The echoing cries of Jing Rui filled Zhang Jingyun's ears fiercely. "Rui! Where are you?" Zhang Jingyun regretted it. He trusted himself too much and even managed to go out without sunglasses. He should have brought Jing Rui's lace bra over to use as sunglasses. P.S. Seeking recommended tickets, seeking follow.up reading, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. Antarctic Convention vs. Emergency Evacuation Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Antarctic Convention vs. Emergency Evacuation Collection to the right. A little more to the right. Jing Rui shouted. Zhang Jingyun appeared very helpless, reaching out his hands and touching them as he walked. Seeing his appearance, Jing Rui burst into tears. "Where is it?" Zhang Jingyun roared. "Don't be afraid, move forward, I'll be right at the door." Jing Rui became Zhang Jingyun's eyes, directing him to stumble forward. Zhang Jingyun stumbled to the door. Jing Rui was shocked. Zhang Jingyun is an extremely handsome person. But now, with blood-red eyes, a ferocious face, wrinkles blown out of the originally smooth face, and messy hair like a homeless man. Rui. Zhang Jingyun reached out his trembling hand and groped for her, only to find peace of mind when he caught her. Jing Rui's face immediately turned red with embarrassment and she said, "Here you are, don't touch her randomly." Zhang Jingyun hugged her in his arms. As long as he returned to the small station, Zhang Jingyun could survive with his eyes closed. Without Jing Rui's words, he quickly took off his clothes and crawled into the bed. Zhang Jingyun slept until noon the next day before waking up. Seeing him wake up, Jing Rui propped herself up and sat up. She lay her legs horizontally, letting Zhang Jingyun rest on her thigh, and her fingers caressed the corners of Zhang Jingyun's eyes. "Is it still okay?" Zhang Jingyun couldn't help but ask. "He still can't see clearly." Jing Rui said, "Okay, this is snow blindness. The retina is stimulated by strong light, and the reflectivity in the snow is nearly 95%. Without wearing sunglasses, it's equivalent to looking directly at the sun. How many days do you need to rest?" "It will take 4 or 5 days no matter what." "Can I really find the Aurora station?" Zhang Jingyun suddenly asked, and after searching for almost 20 consecutive days, he was no longer full of confidence. Jing Rui touched Zhang Jingyun's face and said firmly, "You can definitely find it, just like you climbed 6 mountains and brought me here." Zhang Jingyun remained silent. "My illness has healed," Jing Rui suddenly said. "What disease?" Zhang Jingyun asked. Jing Rui gave him a white glance and said, "Did you forget about depression? I haven't taken any medicine these days, and my mood is particularly good." Zhang Jingyun let out a sigh. "I never treated you like a patient. Thank you for curing me." Zhang Jingyun said, "It's also possible that Tagore's poetry cured you. Anyway, there's nothing we can do now. Let's hear a few words." Jing Rui recited the poem from Gitanjali. "If time has passed and birds no longer sing, the wind has also become tired, then cover me with a thick curtain of darkness, just like when you wrap the earth in your sleeping blanket at dusk, gently close the petals of the water lily again. The journey is not over, and the luggage is empty, clothes are torn and stained, and people are exhausted. You relieved her of her shyness and embarrassment." A piece of information surfaced before our eyes. "Practice with partner once, attribute point plus 0.2, Zhang Jingyun opened the system panel. Model system, host. Zhang Jingyun, realm. None, life. 25 of 87, practice. None, skills. Introduction to bone joining, introduction to fishing, attribute point. 2.4. The lifespan is 2 years shorter." Zhang Jingyun's heart felt heavy. It's not that alcohol and lust have emptied Zhang Jingyun's body, and there's no need to quit drinking. Practicing will only have benefits, not drawbacks. Over the past 20 days, I have been doing my best to search for rescue, which has resulted in excessive physical exertion and malnutrition, resulting in a loss of 2 years of lifespan. Zhang Jingyun shook his head. Being able to survive, what's missing 2 years of lifespan? He looked down and saw 2.4 attribute points, feeling a little relieved. If you like it for 3 more days, you can gather enough 3 attribute points, and your eyes will almost recover. Then you can take some risks. Zhang Jingyun closed his eyes and thought. During the day, in order to save diesel, the generator had to be turned off, and the temperature inside the room gradually decreased, quickly reaching a trembling point. "Are you waiting for me in such a cold room every day?" Zhang Jingyun held Jing Rui in his arms. He was tired, but Rui didn't feel bitter. "I'm fine, just lie in bed every day, you're even more miserable, walking outside every day." Zhang Jingyun hugged even tighter. On the 3rd day, Zhang Jingyun accumulated 3 attribute points and extravagantly turned on the generator, causing the temperature in the room to quickly rise. However, Jing Rui exclaimed in surprise. Zhang Jingyun said, well, just cook some more rice. It's dry rice. Then open a can of sardine, and I'll bathe you after eating. Jing Rui swallowed her saliva. Every word Zhang Jingyun said was a temptation she couldn't resist. There was only one bag of rice, and the two of them could only cook congee, which could last longer. There were only 6 cans of sardine, and Zhang Jingyun took 2 of them to fish. As for taking a shower, that's even more of a luxury in luxury. How much gas does it take to burn so much water and take a shower? Jing Rui is a clean person who can only wipe her body with a handkerchief every day. Zhang Jingyun clumsily dug a lot of snow from outside, melted a basin of water with natural gas stove, and then carried Jing Rui to a bench to sit and wash. Help me wipe my back, I can't reach it. Jing Rui stuffed the handkerchief into Zhang Jingyun's hand. Zhang Jingyun held a handkerchief on Rui's bare back, gently wiping it, and then soaked the handkerchief in a basin, soaked in water, and twisted it on her head. Crystal water droplets dripped onto her smooth skin, enjoying her pleasure with her head tilted up, while soaking her long black hair in water. Help me cut my hair. This long black hair made Jing Rui proud, but now she has recovered from her illness and become a brand new and powerful person. Zhang Jingyun asked her to lie on the bench, straighten her hair, and naturally spread it on the bench. He used a multifunctional Swiss military knife to give her a chopping head. Unexpectedly, after chopping it, Jing Rui had short hair and her temperament increased instead of decreasing. She also felt a sense of spiritual competence on her body. Jing Rui became cheerful and smiled. Zhang Jingyun watched her smile tremble wildly. There are only 4 words in my mind. Don't throw away mistakes. Add 0.2 more attribute points. Beyond Zhang Jingyun's plan. Jing Rui put on her clothes, her hair carrying droplets of water, like a lotus in water. She was only wearing a wide shirt to cover her body. Zhang Jingyun took a glance. Jing Rui instinctively covered her collar and looked up, only to see Zhang Jingyun's hands clasped together, his face solemn, and devout worship, saying, Amitabha Buddha. I am worshipping the jade Buddha pendant on Jing Rui's collar. Jing Rui's face was awkward. She picked up the jade Buddha with one hand and held the bottom of it with the other, making Zhang Jingyun pay more formal respects. Rui, I'm going to do something big. What are you doing? It's very exciting, it's a collision of 2 rules. You'll know it when I come back, Zhang Jingyun said, teasing. Mysterious and mysterious. Jing Rui didn't say anything more. She knew he wouldn't leave herself behind. Zhang Jingyun used 3 attribute points one after another. Information surfaced before my eyes. Introduction to hunting, skilled in hunting, mastery in hunting. Zhang Jingyun is preparing to take action against the seals in the east. Although Jing Rui is in good health, she may still suffer from sepsis. Inuit people have a habit of hunting seals to eat liver, and research has shown that seal liver can supplement calories and vitamins. However, seals are protected by the Antarctic Convention and hunting is prohibited. Zhang Jingyun is not hesitant about this and has taken emergency measures. P.S. Seeking collections, seeking recommendations, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. True Fragrance, Seeking Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 True Fragrance, Seeking Collection, come here. Jing Rui suddenly became sneaky. What's wrong? Zhang Jingyun sat in front of Rui, although his eyes could see something, they still looked a bit red and swollen. Here you are. Jing Rui pulled out a lace bra. Zhang Jingyun was stunned. Jing Rui stuttered and said, You. Give it a try. Zhang Jingyun understood and placed the bra in front of him. The 2 semicircles perfectly covered his eyes, and the strap was firmly tied to his head. Rui, you're welcome. With this thing, I can eat 2 more bowls of rice. Zhang Jingyun took off the Rui brand eye mask, sniffed it, and stuffed it into his pocket. I'm dying. I'm holding my breath. Jing Rui suddenly spoke northeastern dialect. Farewell to Jing Rui, Zhang Jingyun walked out the door. The Inuit people would use harpoons to hunt seals, tying ropes to the harpoons and quietly lurking near the seals. Then suddenly throw the harpoon. The harpoon has barbs. As long as it is inserted into the seal meat, it will not fall off, and the rest is to wait for the injured seal to exhaust its strength before giving a final blow. The whaling industry that prevailed in the 19th century was no exception. In order to obtain ambergris and whale oil, whales were drained of their last bit of strength by small harpoons. Unfortunately, the small station does not have a harpoon. The skin of a seal is very thick, and its defense is almost full. It is impossible to kill a seal with bare hands and may even be counterattacked. Zhang Jingyun thought for a moment and found a solution. He arrived at the ice sheet to the east. The iceberg, which used to be as high as a 10-story building, has now collapsed to only a dozen meters. Zhang Jingyun is preparing to rely on half of the iceberg to hunt seals. Before hunting seals, Zhang Jingyun went to the ice crack he had fallen into before, and in this hidden underground area of Antarctica, there were deep blue ice crystals in all directions. The crack was 5 meters deep and there was no place to climb. Zhang Jingyun used these ice crystals to build a pile of ice that was over 2 meters high before climbing out. What Zhang Jingyun needs to do now? Take a sharp ice crystal. He cut off a nearly 2-meter-long cone-shaped ice crystal, tied it with a rope, and then climbed back to the ground to pull out the ice crystal weighing over 100 pounds. Good thing, it's up to you. Zhang Jingyun walked towards the iceberg with ice crystals on his back, and greeted the seal lying lazily sunbathing at the foot of the iceberg. Don't look at me, what should I do? Zhang Jingyun walked around and arrived at the shady side of the iceberg. He used an ice pick to climb up bit by bit. To be honest, it was more tiring than carrying Jing Rui on his back and flipping over 6 mountains. Climb halfway. Zhang Jingyun lowered his head and looked at his feet. 7 or 8 meters above the ground, although there was a certain slope, falling was not comfortable. Zhang Jingyun calmed down and continued to climb. Mastery in hunting has greatly benefited Zhang Jingyun, and his rich hunting experience in his mind makes even the old Inuit feel inferior. Not only that. Zhang Jingyun found that his courage had also increased significantly. If it had been before, Zhang Jingyun would not have had the courage to climb an iceberg over 10 meters high. Climbing up the iceberg, Zhang Jingyun took a slight rest and patiently sharpened the ice crystal with a multifunctional Swiss military knife. Until it's like a sharp thorn, it doesn't stop. Zhang Jingyun stood up and looked at the seal under his feet. The ice wall on his sunny side was almost 90 degrees vertical, and the seal felt very secure leaning against its back. However, it was this sharp and axe-like ice wall that gave Zhang Jingyun the opportunity to hunt them down. Zhang Jingyun raised the ice spike high and let go. More than 100 pounds of ice spikes fell from a height of more than 10 meters, like a sword hanging from the sky, carrying the momentum of thunder to pierce the round seal to the core. I didn't even have time to sob, so I lost my breath. The other seals were startled by this incident, and their obese bodies rushed into the seal hole at an astonishing speed. Hunting is that simple. This seal is not very big, weighing only 100 or 200 pounds. Its neck was pierced by ice and it died instantly. Zhang Jingyun climbed down the iceberg and dragged the seal to the side to dismember it. He used a multifunctional Swiss military knife to peel off the skin and then cut the meat into strips. During this time, Zhang Jingyun didn't forget to put a few strips in his mouth and chewed them heavily. The taste of seal flesh is not good. But Zhang Jingyun is very calm. Calmly swallow the meat into your stomach. Then Zhang Jingyun cut off several pieces of seal liver and smelled it with a slight fishy smell. Zhang Jingyun then scooped out a few pieces of ice and put the liver slices on top. I waited for a while before picking it up and throwing it into my mouth. The icy feeling covered a hint of flesh and blood smell, and Zhang Jingyun chewed it heavily. At first, there was a slight bitterness, but later there was a hint of sweetness. Liver sashimi tastes better than meat. Zhang Jingyun didn't want to eat too much. This liver is not big and doesn't provide much vitamins. It's better to take it back and enjoy it slowly with Rui. Gung. Gung. Zhang Jingyun was cutting meat when he suddenly heard a cry. He turned his head and saw a round penguin standing next to him, shouting loudly. "Hey, you're lucky. If it weren't for Brother Leopard, you would probably be the one who braised it at night," said Zhang Jingyun, throwing it a piece of minced meat. The round penguin ate the meat in its beak, and this guy was not afraid of anyone. He looked at Zhang Jingyun eagerly. Zhang Jingyun feeds the seal while processing it. "I've dealt with it quite well." Zhang Jingyun wrapped the skin of a seal around its flesh, tied a rope, and slowly dragged it back to the small station. Seeing Zhang Jingyun return with a full load, Jing Rui's eyes widened. "Where did you get the meat from?" "A seal was swimming in the water and suddenly drowned. I couldn't bear it and brought it home, but my strength was not enough, so I could only bring back a portion." Jing Rui tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Rui, taste it." Zhang Jingyun took out seal liver slices and fed them to her. Unexpectedly, Jing Rui did not mention the Antarctic Treaty and did not hesitate when she saw the seal liver slices. She opened her small mouth and ate them, waiting to chew out a hint of sweetness. Jing Rui's eyes lit up and she said, "It's really fragrant. These seals' meat are enough for us to eat for a few months. If we get tired of it, we can try other flavors. Look at this little one." Zhang Jingyun said and pulled out the penguin from his bag. The round little one followed Zhang Jingyun all the way for a few bites. "Do not put yourself on a plate. It's so cute, let's give it a name, let's call it Xiaopeng, okay?" Jing Rui reached out to take the penguin and touched it, smiling like a flower. "What's the name? I'll stew and eat meat in a few days. What's wasting that emotion for?" Zhang Jingyun said as he put the seal meat into the pot. "Are you going to eat my chubby little one?" Zhang Jingyun looked up and met Jing Rui's gaze. He had a bad feeling that in less than a minute, his braised penguin had become chubby. "Rui, are you serious?" Jing Rui protected her and said, "Of course it's serious. You don't know how worried I am waiting for you every day. Now I have Xiaopeng with me. Well. Okay." Zhang Jingyun saw that Jing Rui was extremely fond of Xiaopeng, and instantly understood that this dish was not worth eating. Fortunately, the seal meat was abundant and fragrant enough. The two of them ate until they were flustered. Until evening, Zhang Jingyun suddenly had a whim and flipped through the collection of Tagore's poems. Jing Rui noticed that one hand was playing a demon. She exclaimed in surprise, "What are you doing?" Zhang Jingyun was still thinking about the lost braised penguin, and the corner of his mouth was raised. He decided to punish her a bit and said calmly, "Wet hands, it's easy to open a book." Rui was so angry that she wanted to bite him. P.S. Seeking collections, seeking recommendations, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. When Meteorites Melt, Seeking Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. When Meteorites Melt, Seeking Collection. Trapped in Antarctica on the 50th day. Zhang Jingyun's mood seemed to be shrouded in dark clouds, the rice was almost bottoming out, and there were very few canned goods on the shelves. The Aurora station is only 20 kilometers away. Ironically unwilling to be found. Zhang Jingyun and Jing Rui's days became even more difficult. They ate either fish or seal meat, although they had already tasted nauseous, they had no choice. All for the sake of survival. Jing Rui's legs are already able to walk on the ground for the first time. Walking slowly for 2 steps is not a problem, but it is important to be careful not to exert too much force. Zhang Jingyun's skin has become rougher. A few days ago, while he was fishing by the north coast, perhaps due to the rising temperature and less solid sea ice, he fell into the sea. In Antarctica, where temperatures have been consistently below zero, falling into the sea means that death is not far away. It takes an hour to reach the fishing spot at the small station, but Zhang Jingyun rushed back at the fastest speed. But my body is still frostbitten. The clothes and flesh were stuck together and frozen together. When Zhang Jingyun took off his clothes, Jing Rui saw the flesh blooming and cried uncontrollably. Fortunately, with the panel, Zhang Jingyun's recovery speed, although slightly inferior to Jing Rui's, is also much faster than that of ordinary people. Take a break for 4 or 5 days before gradually getting better. After experiencing this danger, Zhang Jingyun is more aware of the importance of panels. Model system, host. Zhang Jingyun, realm. None, life. 25 of 84, practice. None, skills. Proficient in hunting, proficient in wilderness survival, beginner in snow hiking, beginner in bone grafting, beginner in fishing, attribute point. 0.4, if it weren't for surviving in the wilderness and reaching the proficiency level, and having a beginner in snow hiking, even if Zhang Jingyun returned to the small station, he would have lost half his life. But with these two skills in place, Zhang Jingyun's survival ability has greatly improved. Originally, it would take nearly 10 hours to travel back and forth every day, and every time he came back, he would become tired like a dog. Now, this amount of exercise no longer troubles Zhang Jingyun. He can search for a larger range. The time quickly arrived in late January. It's been over 2 months now. The only bag of rice has finally been depleted, and there are only 2 luncheon meats left in the can. Food is not the most serious problem. Mainly because diesel and gas have run out. There was no diesel, and the temperature inside was almost zero. Zhang Jingyun and Jing Rui huddled together for warmth at night, but they were able to make it through. But during the day, Jing Rui suffered. Gas is even more of a big problem. This means that the two of them will only be able to eat raw food in the future, but fortunately there are no bacteria in Antarctica, and at most, their stomachs are uncomfortable. On this day, Zhang Jingyun rested for the first time without any reason. He used to recuperate at small stations, but most of them were injured and forced to rest. As long as he is not injured or encounters extreme weather, Zhang Jingyun will go out to search for the Aurora station. Today is his first time being absent from work. Zhang Jingyun walked along the coastline. His confidence ran low with the passage of time, and even if he died, he would still find a place to die. Zhang Jingyun decided to choose a position for himself and Jing Rui. The coastline is long and endless. Jing Rui likes to watch the sea. If that day comes, she will sleep by the sea, listening to the waves and the sound of the waves, and die like autumn leaves. Zhang Jingyun saw a whale skeleton. Then a rainbow light shone on his face, and he stopped to see that the surrounding light had become dreamy. Lift your head and pass through the lace eye mask. Zhang Jingyun noticed that the sun was surrounded by colorful halos, and turned his head to look at the sea. Zhang Jingyun was lost in thought, as the sea was covered in countless golden scales and the sky was as clear as water. Beautiful. It's so beautiful. Zhang Jingyun actually felt that dying here was a kind of happiness, and he was not even afraid of death. In the dog-like South Pole, if you have the guts, take him away. Zhang Jingyun climbed onto the whale skeleton and opened his phone, which had no signal at all in Antarctica. He brought it here just to take photos. First, I took a photo with the petrified whale skeleton, and then I took a side shot facing the sea, taking a full shot before stopping. Zhang Jingyun did not mention this matter when he returned to the small station. He did not want to strike Jing Rui too early. The next day, Zhang Jingyun embarked on the journey as usual. This time, Zhang Jingyun did not achieve nothing. He picked up a stone. Taking off his eye mask, he looked at the stone towards the sun. The surface of the stone was a simple black-brown color, revealing a unique texture under the sunlight. Is this a meteorite? Zhang Jingyun's eyes suddenly lit up. He remembers Rui saying it. Meteorites are easily found in mountain ranges that block ice flow. If there are black-brown stones on a pure blue ice surface near the mountain range, it is basically a meteorite. Jing Rui is a financial fanatic. If she doesn't love money, she won't be depressed because of low wages. The dollars in Zhang Jingyun's wallet are not attractive to her, but meteorites are different. Rui truly loves it. Zhang Jingyun didn't fish and returned to the small station early. Why is it so early today? Jing Rui sat on the bed studying and began to draw a map. Every mark on the map was painstakingly explored by Zhang Jingyun. Do you remember why I came to Antarctica? Antarctic wedding, talking about cooperation. A hint of excitement flashed on Zhang Jingyun's face and he said, that's right, taking an oath on the ice, using penguins as bridesmaids, chiseling a piece of ice from an ancient iceberg and putting it in champagne to call Tianchangdi wine. As he spoke, Zhang Jingyun flipped out a bottle of champagne, which was half a bottle left over from the small station. Zhang Jingyun had been reluctant to drink it. Take out the ice cubes from the bag and put them into 2 cups. This is the ice on the iceberg, at least 50,000 years old. Pour champagne on top of it, and it is truly a heavenly and earthly wine. As for penguins, fortunately, I didn't eat Xiaopang. Jing Rui seemed to realize what he was going to do. You don't want me to be the first client for your Antarctic wedding, do you? There's no diamond ring, no old master to be the witness, that's all. The situation is special, but you have to show some sincerity, right? Zhang Jingyun held the black-brown meteorite in his hand, and as soon as the meteorite, shaped like a Ganoderma, appeared, Jing Rui couldn't move her eyes. Zhang Jingyun coughed twice and knelt down on one knee, saying, Jing Rui, are you willing to accept Zhang Jingyun as your lawful husband at this sacred wedding, love him from now on, respect him, comfort him, care for him, and treat him faithfully? Jing Rui picked up the meteorite and chuckled, it's quite strange to propose with the meteorite. Alright, I'll let you pass. I'm willing to do it. Time is tight, the task is heavy, the wedding has been simplified, and we will be sent directly to the bridal chamber. Zhang Jingyun said and picked up Jing Rui. Click. This wooden bed finally came to the end of his life. Zhang Jingyun fell and his face turned disheveled. Jing Rui had nothing to do on it, giggling non-stop. Zhang Jingyun sat up propped up. I suddenly feel sticky on my hands. Turning his head, his face turned green instantly. The priceless meteorite he had worked hard to bring back was shattered by a slap. No. Strictly speaking, it has softened. Then a foul odor spread into the nose. In Zhang Jingyun's mind, it was a bolt from the blue. On the other hand, Jing Rui was also dumbfounded when she saw this behind the scenes. Zhang Jingyun proposed to her with a piece of ollie. The most outrageous thing is, she actually agreed. Sleeping in bed. Zhang Jingyun got up in fear and was about to wash his hands. Suddenly, he and Jing Rui were both stunned. The two of them skipped a question without meeting. Who did this shit come from? Seal droppings, skua droppings, and even penguin droppings don't grow like this. Pulling out Ganoderma-shaped droppings is so unique that only humans can do it. Zhang Jingyun grabbed the feces and smiled. Jing Rui covered her nose and also smiled. P.S. Seeking collections, seeking recommendations, end of this chapter.